Ah, there we go. I hear you.
How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Awesome. Awesome. First off, thank you so much for doing this.
No problem.
Cool. Well, I will try not to take up a shitload of your time.
Oh,
So,
look at that poster. Look at the independent poster back there on the wall. Look at that.
pretty sweet, right?
That is pretty sweet. I love that poster.
Yeah, yeah, me too. It kind of bummed me out because I believe in the CD that drawing is in black and white, and I'm all like, oh, that sucks. And then so this is a colored version of it.
Yeah. He also did this really cool 8x10 for us.
Uh-huh.
Like it looks kind of scary and cool. I don't know if you ever seen that one. Like
Yeah, it's like a promo shot.
Yeah, it's really cool. Like I found this artist guy and I was like, man, that guy's really cool. And we went out to a studio and he took a bunch of pictures. And then he brought us some stuff. I'm like, it's too tame. And he's like, well, I was afraid of what the label's going to say. I'm like, well, fuck those guys. We hired you to do your thing. Do your thing.
Hell
And then
yeah.
he came back with that one and the other one. We're like, yeah, that's cool. So cool.
That's funny because that's in an area that I would like to chat about because obviously like all the shit that's on my channel when I started it, it's all based in my particular perspective of music from when I came into it. Because I was born in '78 and I kind of got into metal and rock and stuff in the mid to late '80s. And so, everything kind of comes from that perspective of like when I got on board with a band and what aspects of them were like important to me.
Sure.
And I feel like a lot of interviews with you, people really want to talk about ignorance and Surf Nicaragua and that area of the music, which is great shit, but that's like not where I came on board. So I love that stuff, but the stuff that like is important that made you guys one of my favorite bands comes after that. And so really like where it kind of starts for me is I probably saw the American Way video on Headbangers Ball at some point because I watched it on and off when I was a young teenager. But when I was 14 years old in 1992, I went to the theater to see a little movie called Encino Man. And I just remember seeing this band and I'm like, this is fucking cool. Cause I was already into thrash and like
Sure.
Anthrax, Metallica, things like that. I was already into that. And so of course that led me to like, all of a sudden you guys were on my radar in a big bad way. And the thing that's interesting, and I don't know if this is because looking up like actual details of you guys, there's some things that are just missing online. You can't really find exact things. And from what I gathered, did you guys actually get signed to Hollywood Records in 1990? Was it that early?
No, it's probably 91. Well, I mean, 91 maybe. Like, I think we were with them when we were doing the Sepultura tour in 91.
Okay. So yeah, because that's kind of, because I've seen some copies of the American Way that are dated 1990 that have the Hollywood Records logo on it. And I'm like, no fucking way.
Yeah, because we did a question before we went on tour with them, and that was on Hollywood.
Cool. Yeah. So that.
Talk about the,
huh?
Let's not talk about that.
Not talk about what? But a question?
So Tim, Joey's dad, loves that record, and he's like, play it. I'm like, no way, dude. I don't even want to hear it, let alone play it.
Oh, I really like that one, but we can start after that. So when that all happened, because I remember as a young person getting into music and then eventually starting my own bands in the mid 90s, but I remember the feeling in the late 80s and early 90s, something that's real unique to that time period, I think, is that the idea of a band like yourselves getting signed to a major label and being able to maintain your integrity and do whatever the hell it is you want and become successful. There were bands that were doing that. And so it's an interesting time. So did you feel like any pressure from Hollywood Records? Because that's like essentially Disney, right? Like that's a Disney company.
Yeah, but the guy who is the president of Hollywood was Peter Paterno, who was our lawyer since the beginning. Was like Metallica's lawyer, Guns N' Roses' lawyer. He wasn't even really like a music guy; he was a lawyer guy.
Mm-hmm.
So we did the record with them, and then Peter left or was ousted or however it worked out. And there's another guy named Bob Chaparty who used to be at Epic, Sony, and he came in, heard our stuff, and he was like, no. I was like, what? First time anyone ever said no. And he wasn't wrong. Like, he was not wrong, but it was the first time we ever heard no. And then we split with Hollywood, went back when Metal Blade made Heel. But it's funny because, previously, we just did our thing, and it was kind of the same. Like when we were at Metal Blade, we just did what we did, and everyone was like, cool. And it was kind of the same at Hollywood, except they just had more money.
Yeah. Okay. So what you did feel like you could make whatever album it was that you wanted to make.
Yeah, we've never felt like we couldn't make the album that we wanted to make. I remember when we did The American Way, and the people from Enigma came and they said, hey, Kmart will buy 10,000 records if we just take the word fucked off that, How Do We Come to Be So Fucked in The American Way.
Yeah.
And I was like, no.
Yeah.
It wasn't really the point of selling records. It was the point of, if we say yes this one time, then what happens next time? Let's just not get started with that. So let's just tell them no. We understand their job is to sell the records, and 10,000 records to a band like us is not an insignificant amount.
Yeah.
But tell them to go fuck themselves.
That double down is what you did.
It's funny, the label people used to be like, oh, I love your record, I love blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, name 3 songs.
Yeah.
I used to do that to them because I are you really saying that because you mean it, or are you just saying that to blow smoke up our ass? So I'd always just say name 3 songs. And it was unfair because right away they could say, well, the title track, The American Way. I'm like, okay, fucking easy, layup. And then they name one other song. And then the guy goes, I don't know. I go, you get a mulligan because I don't know is one of the songs too. But
yeah.
I don't know. I don't like people blowing smoke and not telling the truth. Just tell the truth. It's just easier. Dogs. They're barky dogs.
Well, I'll feel better if my dogs start barking now, so it's cool.
They bark at nothing too. I don't even know if they're barking yet.
Cool. So I mean, you kind of jumped to where I was going with that, but before we get out of Hollywood Records, I have something I've always said, if I ever talk to Phil, I have to ask him about this. So, Independent comes out, and fun side note, the first song I ever learned on guitar was Independent. And I learned it on one string because I'd never played a guitar before. So I just matched the notes playing what it sounded like.
Pretty easy. It's a good start.
But it's a good beginner, but that was my beginning on guitar. But then anyway, so there was a video for Independent. And then a little bit later, I'm watching Headbangers Ball, and they're like, hey, we have a brand new version of the Independent video. And I'm like, oh, what's this going to be? And it was a version of the video where there's a couple of adults watching television, and interspersed in the video is parodies of popular songs. And I was always just like, whose idea was that? And why did that happen?
I didn't know that was a different version of the Independent. Like they made an EPK, like a VPK video press kit. And they did a thing where I think they were in a bit of a pissing match with Warner Brothers. Mm-hmm. So they made a video of taking the piss out of some Warner Brother artists like Phil Collins, Snow, and some other people that are like, that's not music, this is music, blah blah blah. Yeah. So we thought it was human. But the fact
actually on it was on Headbangers Ball.
That's bullshit.
So they played it a few times, and I was always just like, well, the video was already cool. Why did they need to do this? But it's always been one of those oddities where I'm just like, that's an interesting thing.
You are right. The video was cool, and they didn't need to do
that. Well, there you go.
Good enough. And had we known, we would have said, don't fucking do that.
Yeah. I mean, they were mildly funny parodies. I'll give them that.
They were funny on their own, but it wasn't meant for that video. Certainly.
Yeah. Cool. So, all right. So you've already sort of touched on the fact that there was a change in lawyers, and then somebody didn't like what you were doing, and then the relationship with Hollywood Records ended, and you guys
surprisingly ended. Yes.
It moved back to Metal Blade. So that brings us to the record that's like become one of my favorites, mostly because it's not talked about enough, in my opinion, because I have no idea why, because the everything leading up to Heal, I would say, is probably why you guys became one of my favorite bands, because you did 3 full-length albums and none of them sound like the other album. And those have always been my favorite kind of bands, where there's a progression or a story that the band tells. And it's not necessarily like, well, here's version 2 of the thing that we already did and you already liked. There's 3 different things. And when you got to Heal, it just felt like such a really honest and bare kind of album. And I guess my question is, going into recording that, what was the overall, I guess, morale of the band? Like, was there still a momentum and a positivity of like, we're still going to go out and kick some ass? Or is going through the whole major label bullshit, were you jaded a little bit, or how did it feel going into writing and recording Heal?
Well, like I told you, when we played the songs that were going to wind up being on the Heal record, when we played them for Bob when he was at Hollywood, he's like, you have a couple things, but you don't have a record. We reevaluated, went back and rewrote some stuff and wrote some new songs. And some of our old, our crew guys who have been with us forever, and they're like, just remember where you came from, so. And I think this also happened on Awakening too, is it's okay to keep progressing, and it's okay to keep doing exactly what you want. Yeah. Sometimes it's also good to acknowledge the people that got you there and not to forget where you came from.
Sure.
So to have something on the record for different people, like we couldn't go make another record that sounded like Ignorance or whatever anymore. It's just not that interesting to us. Yeah. But it's good to have those elements and that fire, kind of that drive and fire that we had at the beginning that we still have, but it's just mutated and changed.
Yeah.
So we weren't jaded or anything. We were all full speed ahead and ready to go. And I mean, after we recorded Heal, Dave wound up leaving, and that kind of took the wind out of our sails a little bit. Mm-hmm. And then like the tour was like, it just kind of felt like, you're like, I don't know why people don't talk about that record, or why, everything was changing at the time. Music was changing. People's tastes were changing. It wasn't the greatest time in the world for metal bands like us to have some, people just weren't that interested there. I was in the same boat, man. I was Nirvana and Soundgarden and things like that too. So I get it. And that's just the way life is. Things change.
Yeah.
And, we were kind of winding down as far as our lives were changing and families, and, the writing was kind of on the wall for our band. I think, we kind of had a career arc where it started here and it went, and then, it was kind of on the flip side of that, and it was obvious. And I hadn't written any new songs, and everybody was kind of waiting around to make another record, but there was nothing coming. And it just felt like, okay, let's pay attention to see what, things are changing around us. Our lives are changing, and maybe it's, the end of the band.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we were at, kind of just reading the writing on the wall.
So I'm assuming that once because you guys broke up around 2000 or whatever, I'm assuming that to you, especially from what I'm hearing, like you didn't have like musical plans, like your life had moved in a different direction, or did you when you guys decided to split, did you have ideas for doing any other music right away, or was it just I don't know?
No, I was in a band. I was happy in our band, and we weren't writing any songs, and nothing was happening. And I wasn't unhappy with Sacred Reich. It was just like, this is what's going on. And like, we split up probably 97, and I put my bass in my closet and stayed there for 10 years.
Oh, okay. That was earlier than I thought.
Yeah, I did other things with my life.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, from a lesser standpoint for me, because I've been playing in bands since I was 17, and then just a few years ago, I guess it's been 5 years now, I quit the last band I was in, which I'd been up and down with bands that were going nowhere. We're playing bars to nobody, and I'm getting older, and I finally just said, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore, and I started doing what we're doing right now, that talking about music and things like that. And so, like, I totally get that. I get the idea of just like, you know what, I've done this. and I have other priorities in life. Like I had a daughter at that point, or still do, but she was young. And so, it's, I totally understand that. And so but like the interesting thing about that, about our lives, I guess, is the fact that, probably around the time that you guys had split up, musically speaking, even with people that I knew, I was the only person still trying to look for like metal that excited me and stuff. And that kind of faded away. And then in the early 2000s, when I discovered Mastodon, it kind of started to come back, and I go, oh, all this shit that I used to love. And then now there's new metal bands I can listen to. And it almost seemed like clockwork. A few years later, all of a sudden it's like, oh, Sacred Reich's coming back. And I was just like, this is, this is fucking perfect. And so it was a great, like, it's been very cool. And as you know, I'm a fan of Awakening and what you guys have been doing. But the question about coming back together that I have for you is pretty much just, I guess, just you, and not necessarily the other guys, because you're coming back together in a time where all of a sudden there's social media and the internet and Facebook, all of these things, and tons of people that want to give their opinions about things. And the one thing I remember was that you guys, came out of the gate and you're like, here's our new song. And it was Don't Do It, Donnie. And I was like, fuck yeah. But of course I hate it so much, but I have to go look at the fucking comments. And there's all these people that are like, why did you guys, why did you all of a sudden become political? And I'm like, what the? And so like, my question to you is like, when you see these people who are just like, not only are they, ignorant, no pun intended, but they're very loud and sometimes just rude as fuck about stuff. Like you seem to handle it very well, but did it get to you at any point where you go, oh my God, these fucking people, like, how, like, has it ever gotten to you, that kind of backlash that these people
have? Probably, at some point it's frustrating because you're like, come on. Usually the other people commenting take care of it. What, you've just found out Sacred Reich's a political band, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
The thing that was really fucked up was, I think all politicians are totally full of shit. The whole system is corrupt and everything's fucked. Mm-hmm. But when Bernie ran, I'm like, well, there's one real motherfucker in there's one real dude.
Yeah.
He's the one real guy. So I'm like, I need to try to do everything I can. And that caused so much trouble. It caused a lot of trouble. And then the whole Trump thing caused a lot of trouble. And what I wound up doing is just shutting that part down, because I found that all it did was make the fans fight with each other. And that's not really my intention.
Yeah.
So I just was like, you know what? I'm not changing anybody's mind by these things I'm saying any more than anyone's saying something to the contrary is going to change my mind. So let's not talk about this stuff. It just caused a lot of trouble that we don't need. And ultimately, what we really need to do is come together and look past all these things and find the commonality in humanity in one another. The fact that there's no self and no other, and we're all the same. So just to try to focus more on that. And, and I think, with Awakening, that was kind of that's why Don't Do It, Donnie could not be on Awakening, because it was just kind of like a one-off thing, a tongue-in-cheek, like a funny thing. And when Tony, from Iron Reagan was like, hey, make sure you save a song for a split 7-inch, like that seemed like a fun song for that thing. Yeah. But there was no way it was going to go on the record because it would date it. And it doesn't fit in with the overall theme of the record, which is more positive and hopeful. All that good stuff.
Yeah. Which honestly, there is because I struggle with that too, because I always say that I'm one of those lost people that's kind of in the middle to the left. Like there on the left hand, there are things I just go, well, come on. But then, the right angers the fuck out of me, but I feel like I'm kind of lost. And I think that's why people turn to somebody like Bernie, because it's somebody that you can relate to a little bit easier.
It just makes sense. It just makes sense. And he's not full of shit. Like, he's been the same way his whole career. He's not just saying things to say things like all these other assholes.
Yeah.
But they'll never allow him because he actually wants to change things. It's, there's that thing, the master's house will never be taken apart by the master's tools. They just won't allow it, So, whatever,
Yeah.
it's our lot in life to be stuck with this. And maybe the tide will turn, but I would have these discussions with my son, who was like a philosophy and history major, and he would say, we need to legislate, we need to protect people that need protection. I said, I understand, but ultimately nothing's really going to change until people's hearts change, and that's what we really need to strive for.
Yeah.
And it'll happen eventually, and over the course of time everybody will be enlightened over eons and eons, but we're headed in that direction. Everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah.
The funny thing, back to what you were saying about the internet age, I was talking with my wife about it. I said, look, when the record comes out, people are going to say things. I said, just don't read the comments. And then I remember she was getting all mad. She was reading the comments. She goes, I want to reply. I go, don't reply. Don't give these people the time of day, because the people who are talking shit are not our fans. So we're not playing for them, and we're not recording for them, and they're not going to buy our records. Yeah. Those are not the people that are going to be part of our lives. So don't worry about them. And the people that do like it will buy it. And maybe, and you don't want to let this, like, it's the whole blabbermouth syndrome. You don't want to let a few obnoxious people, who are the minority, bother you. And more to the fact is, look, when you put out a record, 99.9% of the population on the planet don't even know who the fuck you are and don't really care. Right? So that's the overwhelming majority of people. And it also would be unrealistic to think that everyone was going to like your stuff. Of course, people aren't going to like it. So why should you be surprised when people make negative comments and don't like it?
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
What does it mean to us? It doesn't mean anything. So what? I don't care. We want people to like it. When people like it, that's great. When people come to the shows, we appreciate it, and it's wonderful, because otherwise we would be sitting at home. There would be nowhere to go and nothing to do. And we just, and as much as Metal Blade likes us, they wouldn't put out the records if they didn't think they could make a couple bucks off of it. And, so we're part of this whole big cycle with putting out stuff, and hopefully the people like it and support it. And then sometimes I see comments are like, there's, come to so-and-so, there's a big market here for it, or do like, people are commenting on these things like they're market research folks, and God bless them. But like when we made Ignorance, there was no market for us. No one knew who we were, but we did it because we had to. And that's why we keep doing it. We do it because it comes out. We have to do it. It's there, and we should pursue it. And hopefully we continue to feel that way and have songs to put out and people enjoy it. We can keep going because it's the greatest thing you could ever do in your entire life. That's how I feel, like, playing music is the greatest thing that we could do.
And that's a damn good way to look at things. And it does, and it's interesting because that does lead me to a thing where it's more of a personal side of things, because there is that thing that people say a lot of being able to separate the art from the artist. But I've found, especially in this age, in the age of the internet and social media, I find myself finding it very important knowing who the people are and it making a difference to me. And I don't necessarily mean, I don't need somebody to say fuck Trump. I don't need anyone to say that. But there's a level of open-mindedness that I would like, and thoughtfulness that I would like. The people that the bands that I love that have been with me for so long, that there's a personal connection that they don't even know is there, but I've lived with them for 30 years of my life. So when you find out that they're I don't know, they're supporting the getting rid of the Roe v. Wade, I'm just like, why do you have to do this to me? And so like, you take it personal, but there is that.
It's like you're betraying your trust. Like, I thought we were friends.
Yeah, exactly. Do you, because music that you loved when you were growing up, have you found that there are people? Well, fuck like that guy.
And look, do I care? Does it make me? look, I was never the big, huge Ted Nugent fan. I had a friend that was,
Yeah.
and I like Ted Nugent. If Stranglehold comes on the radio, I'm not going to turn it off because he's got dumb political views. I don't care. I just don't care. I had people look that last 4 years. I had people in my family. I'm like, oh, I'm like, I love you anyhow. It's just a small part of who you are.
Yeah.
And just because you have some dumb ideas about certain things doesn't necessarily make you a racist or it's confusing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad that we're past it and we don't have to talk about it anymore. And sometimes loving people means accepting things that you don't like, and loving somebody means loving them as they are and accepting them as they are. And sometimes it's tough, but it's a good learning experience for us. But I can't think of anybody I liked that really I went, wow, oh, you're that guy. I can't really think of anybody like that.
For the most part, they've been in music that I don't care for. So
yeah, and I try not to, and I'm trying to be less and less judgmental over those things too.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. It's that's what I was getting as I try to learn that shit too, and it really leads me not to be the fanboy that points out a lyric, but the lyric in Manifest Reality. When I was young, I had to change the world. Now I know I can only change myself. That's something that it's almost like that was pulled out of my life because I'm like, I really had to be able to step back and go, all right, fighting with people is not going to do me any good. It's like, if I talk to them and they understand me, that's fine. But if not, it's not going to do me any good. I need to work on making sure I'm a better person. And so that line was, I'm really like, oh shit, man, I could, if I was a better writer, I could have written that.
I stole it. It's not me. It's like Rumi or somebody like that. It's not.
You didn't have to say that.
Michael Jackson. What was Michael Jackson's
Man in the Mirror?
With the Man in the Mirror.
Yeah.
That's funny. No, but I mean that song "Manifest Reality" is really straight out of my teacher's mouth. Sachoji Rinpoche, my teacher. It's all that song was the last song we recorded. I didn't have the lyrics for it. We were recording it the next day. I was like, oh, I better write some words. And they just kind of poured out. I kind of rearranged them a little bit, but they poured out just like that. And I went and sang it. It's probably my favorite lyrics. I really like that song a lot.
That is something about your lyrics that I've always really liked. I'm assuming this for obviously. I feel like a lot of times they kind of come out of you and you sort of let them be what they are. Like there's some of them seem very to the point. You didn't try to be flowery with it. And I've always really liked that. They're very direct. So when you write lyrics, do you ever find yourself taking forever with them, or do you just kind of let them come out most of the time?
Both.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes they come easy. Sometimes it's a bit more laborious, like songs. Sometimes independent, we practice that day. Those guys split and me and Dave hung out. I wrote that song in 5 minutes after practice.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it sounds like a song you wrote in 5 minutes. There's there's nothing to it.
But and funny enough, you're still playing it every show now. So it's like,
yeah, dude. And Surf Nicaragua, forget it. Me trying to shoehorn those wipeout parts in that song. I was sitting in my bedroom for hours and hours and hours trying to make everything fit. And I went to the rehearsal and showed it to everybody. And while I was like, I don't like it. I'm like, yeah, dude, you got to give it a chance, because I spent way too much time on this to have it just be shot down out of hand. No way. Nice. Some songs you really labor over. I remember listening to At Dawn They Sleep while I wrote Draining You of Life. I totally ripped it off as a vampire song. I ripped it off totally from Slayer. I remember lines in other songs I used from other bands. And yeah, look, man, I'm not that clever. I just got to do the best that I can. And when you say they're direct, I'm just not that good of a writer. I just write what comes out,
Or you're very good. That's the thing, is that's a point that I love about them. That's, and I think other people agree. So I what you might think is a thing you could do better. I say, just keep doing you. And so
that's all I can do. For better or for worse, I'm just trying to be the best me that I can.
Yeah.
Someone said, just don't try to be anybody else. Everyone else is already taken. And this is the thing about us and how we are in our band. Like at this point in our lives, we're totally fine being exactly who we are. We're not trying to be something we're not. There's no pretense. There's no act. There's no nothing. We're totally fine and comfortable being exactly who we are. Not trying to impress anyone. Not trying to be more than anything. Just trying to be the best us.
Awesome. Well, before I let you go, obviously, now that we're talking about songwriting, the question obviously would have to be songwriting for the future, for whatever the next thing will be, album, EP, whatever. I know I've read that you guys did some demoing or something like that, or some writing, but the question that I had about that was, is Joey contributing to the writing?
Yeah,
Awesome.
I think Joey wrote 2 songs.
Sweet, because that's the one thing. Because he's a great energy on stage, and I'm just like, I wonder what that would be like, him coming together with the guys and making new music. That's pretty exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were gonna go actually make a record during the 2 years that we were off, but things changed, situations changed, and it wasn't really. But we got about 5, 6 songs, maybe even 6 or 7 songs in. So the writing is firmly underway, and Joey's he's come up with 2 songs that are, you like when you hear them, you're like, yeah, I bet I know which the 2 Joey songs are, like the super fast, heavy ones. You know what I mean?
Cool.
And it's important because that's the energy that he brings, and it's more natural for him at this point in his life than it is for me in my life. I write stuff like Death Valley and whatever, but I also wrote Manifest Reality and those other songs too, so they're not completely foreign. But Joey has a different take on it. It's cool, and I'm excited to have his contributions to the band. We're very lucky with him. We got very, very lucky with him. He just kind of fell in our laps, and everything worked out the way it's supposed to. And imagine that.
I think there's a part of me that I kind of see myself up there when I see him, because because I'm sure, because he's younger and probably already a fan. And I'm just like, oh yeah, that's, so it's almost like, it's like back in the day when Jason Newsted was in Metallica. And I'm like, it's like a fan is up there. And like, you connected with that so much as a fan, because you're like, holy shit, could have been me. Probably, couldn't have been me, but you know what I mean?
No, I understand. Yeah. And when we go on tour and he's young and everything's new for him, it's nice to see his perspective on things. And like, we're really lucky with him because he just has a great attitude, loves to play guitar, crushes.
Yeah.
Like, when we were demoing the last record, I mean, he recorded all that stuff. So when we went in the studio and we didn't know how it was going to go with Jason, and it wound up not working out, and everyone was like, what are we going to do? I'm like, I already spent the last year working on all these songs with Joey, and he knows all the songs. I'm not concerned at all. I know Joey can go in the studio and crush it. We didn't know if Joey was going to be the guy in our band.
Yeah.
I knew that he was going to be able to record the record, and I didn't think that, he wanted to hang out with a bunch of 50-year-old guys. But then while we were recording, it became so obvious, that he was our guy. We were thinking like, who are we going to get, and talking about different people and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, our new guitar player is right in there. We don't really have to overthink this. He's in there destroying things.
Yeah.
If we pull our heads out of our ass, we'll see it.
Yeah. No, I love how that worked out, because it's just, he's great. He's a great energy. But yeah, I don't want to keep any more. Obviously, whatever you guys have in the future, I'm going to be front and center, whatever the fuck it is, because I love you guys. And, I really appreciate you chatting with me for a little bit, and don't be a stranger. And we'll next time, hey, maybe send me some advanced music whenever you guys have new stuff coming out. I'm just going to throw that out there. You don't have to say yes or no.
Text me your email.
All right, we'll do. But yeah, thank you so much for this. It's been an absolute pleasure and honor. And I will. I'll see you around, sir.
You got it, man. Take care.
All right.